Good morning, evening, or night to whoever follows this channel, Cristero Moderno. Today I shall do a brief but Papal biographies for the popes who lived between the year or who reigned between the year 67 and the year 100. That is the last third of the first century. Well, when Peter gets okay, first and foremost, it is important for us to know, if not who they were, at least that they existed, if not what they did or their life, knowing that they existed and that they are documented. These lists of popes have been documented by there's a book called the Liber Pontificales, which is a biography of all the popes from Peter. I think that one went up through 1950s. 1,950 years of papacy reported in that book. But this book is not alone. It is also um, correlated. It is also, you could say, corroborated in through other books such as Saint Irenaeus. He has a list of the all the popes from Peter up until his time in the year 180. There's an Annuarius Romanus, and a few other books give credence to that. In Spanish, quickly, le mando yo un saludo al hermano Joseph Morales. Buenos días. Sí, hermano, disculpe, llegué yo muy tarde a casa y por eso no le pude yo llamar. Pero voy a buscar el tiempo para comunicarme con usted, mi hermano. I'm sending greetings to my brother Joseph Morales from Ecuador, a brother in Christ. And so I was sending greetings to him. Now, let's continue. As I was saying, these lists of popes are found in the Liber Pontificales, the writings from Saint Irenaeus. I think Papias also wrote a chronology of the early popes, Eusebius of Caesarea, and these document the existence of popes even before all these dates invented by Protestantism. So, now let's talk about who these popes were. Let's start with Saint Linus. When Peter gets crucified in the year 67, Linus gets named to be his successor. Of course, it wasn't Peter who said, "You are going to be my successor." It doesn't work like that. The surviving bishops are the ones who elect a new pope. A pope does not get to choose his own successor. Now, having said this, what do we know about uh, Saint Linus? Well, Linus actually was actually a disciple of Paul. We can see, for example, in 2 Timothy 4:21, that this Linus we're talking about, the second pope, had been a disciple of Paul. I invite you to look for it with me. Let's look at 2 Timothy. Let's look at 2 Timothy 4:21. And let's see what 2 Timothy 4:21 tells us about it. Excuse me, my computer is a bit slow. There we are. We're going to look for 2 Timothy 4:21. It tells us the following. Do your best to get here before winter. Eubulus greets you, and so do Prudence, Linus, and Claudia, and all the brothers and sisters. Who? Notice Linus. And Claudia mentioned here happens to have been the mother of Linus, who happened, in other words, the mother of the Pope number two in history. So we see it very clearly evident that that the second Pope is actually found in the Bible as well. He got to know who the apostles were. Now, along the time that Linus was governing the church, he passed a decree that, remember, he was a follower of Paul. And in one of Paul's letters, Paul writes that women should keep their heads covered when in prayer. Linus, okay, passes a decree ordering that women should cover their heads while they are in prayer or in the church. He named the first 15 bishops after the death of Peter, and he died a martyr. Uh, we also know where Linus is buried because in 1615 a tomb with the letters Linus was found in St. Peter's Basilica. Well, Linus gets put to death in the year 76, and in that time, um, Cletus is named. Cletus gets a papacy in the year 76, and he starts dividing the city of Rome in 25 regions called parishes. He is the one who gets the parochial system established in the Catholic Church. Same parochial system we now have in account. For example, in Los Angeles, California, the Archdiocese of Los Angeles is divided into 5 regions, and each of the 5 regions is divided into 4 deaneries. The 4 deaneries are each have 15 parishes, more or less, and many major metropolises are divided like that, or in a similar manner. They maybe not with the same names. Every diocese is named in its smaller. Excuse me. Every diocese assigns a particular territory to each parish. Well, it was Cletus who started with that habit, and he died a martyr as well. That's about all we know about Cletus, even though he reigned during that time. But when um, Cletus, or the third pope, dies, Clement rises up to the papacy. He gets named to be pope. For a long time, Clement had been known to be a secretary of the popes previous to him. Now, Clement is considered to have, okay, before talking about who Clement was, let's talk about how he came to the faith. Because Clement had been a pagan at first, and he was a very cultured pagan at first. In documents known as the Pseudo Clementines, his biography is stated as follows. He had gone, he was orphaned very small. However, he had some wealthy relatives who were able to send him to the best schools in Rome. These were heathen relatives. He excelled, especially in Greek literature, even though he was Roman, because remember at this time, even the Romans considered Greek to be superior to Latin. At this time, for the very same reason, the church had not yet adopted Latin as its official language. He was still using Greek. Now, when Clement finishes his studies, he goes to a dilemma of the faith. He was a pagan. He had not yet accepted Christ. But he had a dilemma he wanted to figure out. His dilemma was, is there life after death? Is there a hope for the people who have passed on to better life? His question was, why should I be good in this life and not participate in all the pleasures of life just to be have a chance at being having some hope for in the life to come? And what if there's no life to come in the future? You'll have wasted everything right here. Wasted his life in the pursuit of pleasure instead of preparing himself for the afterlife. But then again, what if there is an afterlife and he chooses to waste all the time with the pleasures of this world and find out that he did not prepare himself enough for the afterlife and suffer the consequences? So Clement wanted to be sure. So in a very specific time, then he finds out that there were some famous witches in Egypt who had the habit of calling up the dead. So Clement, not yet having accepted the gospel, not yet knowing about the gospel, goes to the port of Rome, gets pays to be able to get on a boat. Excuse me. Pays to be able to get on a boat to take him to Egypt. However, at that moment, Barnabas, yes, the same Barnabas that preached along with the side with Paul, had been taking some vacation time in Rome. Peter the apostle had not yet been moved to Rome. Barnabas was spending some vacation time there. Or Barnabas was about to arrive for some vacation time. As Clement is about to get onto the boat to head over to Egypt, he comes across with Barnabas. So as Clement was waiting for his boat to leave, he and Barnabas start up a conversation. And Clement gets so much intrigued that he forgets all about his trip to Egypt. He lets his boat leave, and during the 2 weeks that Barnabas was there on vacation, Clement was with him. So it wasn't much of a vacation for Barnabas because all along Barnabas was ministering the gospel to Clement. Time finally came for Clement for um, for Barnabas to head back to Antioch. Remember that in the first books of the first chapters of Acts of the Apostle, it tells us that Barnabas, along with Paul, were based in Antioch. Also, the early list of popes tells us that during this time, Peter, the first pope, had been living in Antioch. He was actually the first patriarch of Antioch. He establishes the see of Antioch. So Barnabas says goodbye to Clement, heads back to Antioch, now without inviting first Clement to join him. Clement said he couldn't until the following year. He would be catching up. And then um, time moves on, and the following year finally comes about, and Clement finally goes to look for Barnabas in Antioch. Barnabas introduces him to Peter, but Peter was at that moment preparing for a debate he was about to have with Simon Magus. So, alongside, Clement sits down and talks with and listens to Peter practicing his debate, and even decides to join in with the discussion in preparation for the debate, which was to be the next day. Now, having said this, we know that also he studied alongside with Polycarp and Ignatius of Antioch, also alongside with John the Apostle. We know Polycarp and Ignatius of Antioch were disciples of John the Apostle. And after Cletus dies, it is John who names him up to the becoming a bishop. Since at the, no, wait a minute. Yes, since at that time there were a few different difficulties going along, uh, happening due to the persecution. You see, in the year 91, Domitian, the second horn of the beast, was persecuting the church. Now, what else do we know about Clement? Well, Philippians 4:3 tells us a bit more about Clement. I invite you to join me in Philippians 4:3. I don't know why send me those commercials. I have never approved. I mean, my channel is not monetized. So why should I have all these advertisements that do not give anything to me? Okay, Philippines 4:3. Yes, and I ask you, my true companion, help these women since they have contended at my side in the cause of the gospel, along with Clement and the rest of my co-workers whose names are in the book of life. You see now this Clement here refers to the very same Clement of Rome we are now discussing. Now, this Clement of Rome, Pope Clement to the fourth Pope, is also known as one of the Apostolic Fathers, since he also wrote some, or actually a book called the Letter of Clement to the Corinthians. In it, he demonstrates the authority of the Bishop of Rome over all the other churches. Protestants don't want to accept this as a fact. However, Clement, well, during Clement's rule, early in Clement's rule, Clement takes the papacy in the year 91. 2 years later, in 93, there is a movement, a Reformation movement in Corinth. Oftentimes, we like to think that Reformation was started with Martin Luther in 1527. Well, there was a community that was trying to reform the church as early as the year 93. By this time, all the apostles except the apostle John had perished. John was the only apostle left, and by this time he had been banished to the island in Patmos. So, a few young um, members of the community of Corinth thought, okay, the apostolic time is over. Apostles are no longer dead. Why should we still go by the teachings of the apostle? Let's spice up the life of the church. Let's make it something new. Let's make something better. And they decided to get rid of all the presbyters and bishops that all the priests that were left in by apostolic succession. They came here, they came to Corinth, got rid of them, and now they were trying to promote a reformation. Does that sound familiar? Yes, just like Protestants do nowadays. Upon hearing of this, Clement writes his letter, a very long letter, where he reprimands the church in Corinth for trying to reform the church, and tells them that those who were not established by apostolic succession had no authority and no right to try and be promoting or reforming or making any changes to the church, because because in authority first comes the apostles, then those who were physically named by the apostles, many of whom were still alive. Thus, these young people who were trying to reform the church, according to them, had no right, and they had to be kicked out or excommunicated from the church because of that. In this letter, he also reaffirms that Rome has every right to intervene in all the churches that existed, for Rome, the Bishop of Rome, the successor of St. Peter, is the maximum authority in the church. This is also established in his letter to the Corinthians in the year 93. Now, I skipped one important fact that after Clement accepts the faith, Peter himself consecrates him a presbyter, that is to say, a priest. And then he moves up through the ranks to be finally becoming elected pope in the year 91. Now, as stated earlier, now by year 100, he had already outlived his persecutor, Domitian. Domitian dies about the year after actually no, Domitian dies in about 95. Then Nerva becomes the emperor, and then Nerva names this guy called Trajan as his successor in the year 99. And in the year 100, during the reign of Trajan, who was also an enemy of the church, the third horn of the beast, during the time of Trajan, the third horn of the beast, uh, Clement is arrested, tried, and sentenced to death for preaching the gospel. As you can see, Hadrian was another enemy of the church, another persecutor of the church. Now, Clement was martyred in the year 100, being tied to the anchor of a boat. You guys know boats have anchors. He was tied up to an anchor, tossed overboard. So Clement ended up drowning to death as part of his execution. This is all I have for today. And I end by saying, Long live Christ the King!